Hello, everybody. I told you I would be right back with something a little bit wondrous, and of course, we are talking about the biggest movie that came out this past week. Though, ironically enough, not in terms of theaters, because nobody really went to bother to go see this movie. Said they went to go see The Croods 2 and other flicks. Not getting into it. Uh, I will eventually give my opinions about everything and it being its own rantings and ravings. But I am here to, of course, talk about Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah.
Though I will fully admit that I don't know why they decided 1984 of all the time. I think that might have been whenever Wonder Woman got relaunched in the DC universe in the comics. Oh. It's a neat little nod, but ultimately, yeah, I gotta talk about this movie. So, those who actually remember my opinions about the original Wonder Woman, I wasn't of the mind of like everybody else, like it's one of the greatest movies of all time, it's one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. No, it was a good movie that was overblown to fuck. Like they act like, oh, it's one of the best films. Guys, this is a very good DC EU movie, but that's not saying much. At that time, you had Man of Steel, Murder Man vs. Captain Hypocrite, and Suicide Squad. You didn't have stiff fucking competition at that point. And then they finally released Wonder Woman, and hey, there's actually a good one. And yeah, I think Justice League came out later that year too. Yeah, Justice League did, and it was a mess. Oh, so to talk about Wonder Woman 1984, like I said, I actually like the original. I didn't think it was the greatest film of all time. I thought it was a good Captain America First Avenger knockoff. Though I think it brought up issues like, well, why, was she 100 years, you know, or so on this earth and decide, or in actually our realm, and decide then to finally come back whenever, Doomsday is. Well, this movie decides to not really explain that, which is a problem. So, yeah, to really quickly get into one thing that is always the problem with the Warner Brothers DCEU way on how they're doing things. And not only that, but it's an issue that unfortunately I think they're creating for themselves for no good reason. And it all comes back to the idea that they're not planning things out very well. Now, this movie seems to have like nominal connections with actually the rest of the Justice League group or the other films and all that because it one ignores the fact that Wonder Woman wasn't in a self-imposed exile for 100 years or anything like that, but it says she's actually been somewhat active, which again it flies in the face of many things. And I know people are like, well, you don't need to think about it. Yes, we do need to think about that because that is a plot hole. And that's a problem because also the other movie created that at the end of its film. And also people are like, well, they're not meant to be super connected. Why you have the same fucking actors in it? It's the same issue where if people are trying to say that with Batman and Batman Returns, like, yeah, they are meant to be connected. Sure, the connections are the main characters, but there's still at least some continuation from it. And then if you have shit like Batman Forever, where it just completely goes totally off the rails, you have even more problems. Hell, look at Batman Begins going to the Dark Knight, where it is a sequel, it's a direct sequel, but it is a direct sequel not like immediately right after it. It's at least like a year or so after the events of Batman Begins. Hey, that's interesting. That's a neat idea. It's even like the Marvel films, like, yeah, they're not exactly like direct sequels from the last movie. they're sequels from some of the other movies. And they still have good plots woven within them. Here with the DCEU, this shows more that their plots are just not connected well enough together. They don't have a good enough producer or between everything to actually connect all the dots together to actually make this a cohesive story. And because of that, you're then going to rely upon the films themselves to be good enough to hold themselves up. And guys, Wonder Woman 1984 is fucking bad. Like, it is astoundingly bad. The long and short of the story is Gal Gadot, she reprises her role as Wonder Woman, and thankfully she has, or Gadot, I think it's actually pronounced Gadot. I can't remember. She has reprised her role as Wonder Woman, and she has picked up on some acting lessons. She's getting a little bit better. Her singing is still fucking terrible. Um, Her acting still borders sometimes into being a little bit uh, wooden at times, but it's not as bad as it was in the first one. But within this movie, there is introduced two new villains. Whoa! Yeah, she's the best way to put it. And I'm going to get into them in a minute. But ultimately, this all revolves around a monkey's paw. Like I've been saying for a while, it's like there is a wish granting thing that ends up granting everybody's wish. Or their like deepest desires and shit like that. And of course, that's the reason why Steve Trevor's back. And it turns out there's also this lady, her name is Barbara. She wants to pretty much have the powers of. She wants to be Wonder Woman. She wants to be. I want to be fast like Diana and blah blah blah. This would make a lot more sense, this once and all that. If Barbara wasn't introduced like nearly 15 minutes into the movie. Gonna get into that in a second. But yeah, they don't really share a lot of screen time. She kind of is like pining after, Diana's vagina the entire time. I don't know. That they write it very awkwardly. It's like, so she's supposed to seem like a lesbian stalker because it's what she feels like. Don't know what the point of that was. And she eventually, like I said, she wishes for, inadvertently to be like Diana, and she realizes she gets like some Wonder Woman's powers and all that. And then she later on wishes to be an apex predator, and that's why she looks like a person from Cats with slightly better makeup. It's it's all torn apart by the fact it's played by Kristen Wiig. Like at points they try to be like, "Oh, you're so beautiful." No, I'm sorry, y'all. Kristen Wiig, she's like 5 beers to being decent looking. She is not an attractive lady. It's one of the issues with making a story about that. Like, having a character who wishes for them to be attractive. Because you eventually need to ugly them first off, and then you need to make them more attractive later on. Honestly, many films grapple with this issue. Sometimes they go too far in the wrong direction, where they cast way too pretty of actresses to where it's like, oh, well, I just need to, get some makeup on them and all that. But then there are some actresses who can pull off, a bit of the dorkiness and all that that is required of a character like this. Shannon Elizabeth is one that I can always think of. She can actually pull off dork quite well. And why they didn't go with her, I don't know. Because Chris wanted to go suck a cock. She has absolutely no acting chops throughout this entire movie. And she's just as fucking unrelentingly bad in this movie as she is in everything else she's in. Yay. Though, if I can say one thing, she's barely in this movie. Like, she is maybe in 20 minutes. It's 2.5 hour long flick. Maybe even less than that. And ultimately, she plays little to no role in the entire thing. But yeah, so they stumble across this one artifact that Diana technically kind of comes across while stopping this bank robbery that feels like it was shot in the 1980s. Which, hey, it's when the movie's supposed to take place. But I will tell you this much: beyond some of the stylings that people, or some of the styles that people wear and all that, I couldn't tell you that this movie was made or was shot or was supposed to be set in the 80s because there's a lot of stuff that, like, it doesn't have any 80s music. It doesn't feel like an 80s flick. It feels like a 2000s flick that happens to say, oh, I was shot, or it's a 2010s flick shot. It's like, I was shot in the 80s. I'm set in the 80s. This is totally the 80s, guys. It totally is, man. Yeah, totally 80s. It does not feel like the 80s at all throughout the entire flick. It consistently feels like a 2010 movie. Like, it's weird that they decided to go this route without committing to it. Like, it's bizarre that they decide to never once are they able, do they even bother with actually having 80s music? It's bizarre. Like, they never have an 80s tune. Like, there's no recognizable 80s music throughout the entire movie. And it's like, why? You're Warner Brothers. You have access to millions, if not billions, of songs. I'm pretty sure you can find an 80s tune that you own. It was a weird, weird choice, honestly. But beyond that, um, we have to talk about the other villain of this, Pedro Pascal, who is Maxwell Lord. Now, those who know Maxwell Lord, his actual powers, because he does have powers within the comics, is that he can kind of push people into wanting to do what he wants to do. It's not super powerful that he has, everything, but they kind of Ubered him up, leading up to Countdown, so that way he can control Superman's mind. Wah, 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 wah. Here, Pedro Pascal does not have that. He is simply a con man in all essence who was trying to get this stone so that way he can make himself into the stone and he can then take stuff from people by being the stone of granted wishes. It's it's stupid. It's really stupid. The whole idea behind it because it's by the end of it all, just to sum this movie up, the entire point of it is that you shouldn't be looking for a quick way out. That is given in its early sequence as 10 minutes long, where it's showing Wonder Woman as a little kid on this back on Themyscira, competing in this not Olympic game thing, where for some reason everybody suddenly has like an attempt at a Greek accent, which I don't remember being in the first movie, which is really distracting because they keep slipping from Greek into this like almost like the Musian squirrel getting a rocky and boingo. It's weird that they slip into almost Russian accents at times. And again, it flies in the face of the first movie because like Queen Hippolyta just lets Wonder Woman, go in these games, but it's like, but wasn't she making a big deal that she didn't want her trained? And wait, what? Why would she allow her to compete in these games if she didn't want her? No, no, no. I'm gonna start trying to figure this out. My brain's gonna fucking bleed. So yeah, that happens. And honestly, that scene alone sets the tone for the entire film. It's one. It's an overtly long way to get to a simplistic message that honestly the film does a piss poor job of really getting home to you. Because the message is don't look for the easy way out, always try to do the best and true thing. Thanks. I can figure that out for myself. It's so kid like, and I get that packaging is probably like, well, if it was so important, why don't people always do it? People always want to try and look for the easy way out. Just because we know this lesson doesn't mean that we're not going to try. We are People are nothing but stubborn assholes. You're surprised that we do stupid things for stupid reasons. But yeah, the the entire premise of this is just a lesson to be learned. And I don't know why this needs to exist in a Wonder Woman movie. That's ultimately the biggest problem. Is like, I don't know what this really fucking has to do with Wonder Woman, or why this needs to be. One, there's the issue that Wonder Woman acts really out of character at times. Like, she's just all about Steve Trevor, and in fact, he's having to actually save her at times, which is awkward. It's like, okay, I thought the entire idea was that she didn't need saving. Regardless of the fact that she gave up part of her powers for it, she would still not want somebody else saving her. She would want to take care of herself. Not gonna bring up that can of worms that packaging gets created. But on top of that, the idea of bringing back Steve Trevor, it's fine technically, but its way and how it's done is so strange. Like, instead of him just coming back from the dead, he is resurrected in another guy's body, but he actually is. It's his spirit, but she can see him. But honestly, he's a different guy. It's like, what? Wait, what? The whole time, I'm just sitting there, I'm just so baffled by it. I just don't know why they decided to shoot it this way. And oh, I would also be remiss to say, like, the movie has sometimes fine CGI, other times god fucking awful. The chase sequence eventually that is in Egypt at one point, which ultimately only exists to add an action sequence to the film. Because honestly, it's not really important because Diana decides to do stupid things for stupid reasons again. Her. But, and only that, but it's also signs like that the movie can't decide what it wants to do. Like, at one point she's able to push a fucking truck with her bare hands down a highway, chasing after other cars are doing like at least 60 miles an hour, and has no real problems. Then later on, she has an issue trying to push an armored vehicle that's about the same weight away. I don't know. Magic jump cut. Sorry, I had a badass sneeze there. Oh, the sniffles are leaving some. But yeah, the movie has the problems of that constantly Diana's powers seem to wane here or there, depending upon what the plot really needs it to be. And then, on top of everything, we have just utter ridiculousness happening throughout the plot. Like, there are times where it could be easily solved, but because Diana needs to have this lesson taught to her, it takes an extra, like, fucking 35 minutes, if not longer, to fucking resolve everything. Like, it's bizarre that this movie is 2.5 hours long because the last act of this movie is 40 minutes. The last act is flabby as fuck. Like, I always complain about a movie having a very long middle act. Here, the middle act is just about the normal length of film should be, but because of that, it has a long final act that we have to see Cheetah get her final powers, and it doesn't really mean much except for she looks like a cat's reject. We gotta see Wonder Woman's stupid armor thing that leads to this stupid cameo at the end with Linda Carter, because that's a thing that needs to fucking exist. Oh yeah, I need to talk about the after credits sequence. Pardon me. I know that not all after credit sequences need to further into a movie or anything like that, but if you're going to be bothered to have one, make it purposeful. That's all I ask. Otherwise, you're wasting my damn time. I don't give a shit about Linda Carter. I really don't fucking care. Maybe Patty Jenkins does, but guess what? Don't give a shit. She doesn't have any role to play on anything. She just is a throwaway line that's featured, so that way we can have another Wonder Woman action figure to sell to kids that wears gold armor. And ultimately, the gold armor doesn't fucking mean anything. That's the worst part. It's like, this doesn't have an effect on anything. And not only that, but there's some insanely stupid things that happen throughout it. Like, it's weird that they decide that at also one point that during the fight with Cheetah, like the way she's able to defeat her, she doesn't really like beat her. She just kind of like defeats her a little bit, is by, grabbing this electric thing and throwing it in this water that she is in. Problem here, Wonder Woman's also in it. And I know some people can say, well, the gold that she's wearing, it's not conductive of electricity or anything. Doesn't fucking matter. Her head's opening in it. Her skin is still touching the water. There are moments throughout this entire flick. I shouldn't say moments. I'd say like whole parts where there is logic just taken and thrown out the fucking window. Like, I hate to be the guy to begin to nitpick this movie, but this is a movie that is easily open to shit that could be nitpicked to death. Like, how the fuck does Wonder Woman just happen to learn how to make an invisible jet? It's weird. It's stupid. How the fuck is a regular fighter jet able to fly from Washington, D.C. all the way to Cairo? We were lucky if B-52s could fly that far, which was a fucking fighter jet. Also, where the fuck are they parking the damn thing? In the middle of the street? And not only that, but how's Steve Trevor able to figure out how to fly a plane instantaneously? And not only that, but why do they think that having a connection on TV is the same as being able to physically touch somebody? Like, early on, it is said, and it is shown, that the only way that, because eventually Pedro Pascal, how Maxwell Lord gets his power, is by he wishes to be this wish stone thing. Okay, whatever. It's stupid, it's ignorant, and it also makes Maxwell Lord not have any powers. What the fuck ever. I don't care. But what I do want to know, though, is because it's exemplified that he has to touch people, or they have to touch him, for him to grant their wish. How is it later on here that, like, he's shown this, like, satellite thing that the government was working on, where it can pipe into everybody's signal and touch people, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's because of particles. Patty Jenkins, stop with your bad fucking science. You are making Zack Snyder look smart. Stop it. This is not just bad science. This is ignorant of actual fucking facts of things. You know that a TV signal, how it works. I would assume you have a modicum of an idea that, yes, it is technically a slightly physical thing, but we cannot feel it. We are unable to feel the damn thing. I shouldn't have to explain this. I shouldn't have to explain to a kid that there is an invisible signal that goes to TV that tells it this is what is playing. I mean, it is impermeable to us. That is just how it is. I think I might be using that phrase incorrectly. But we cannot touch it. Yes, it does physically exist. We're unable to interact with it. Guess what? The fifth dimension fucking exists. We can't fucking interact with that shit either. I, I don't know how we have a big name director who's been given just endless amounts of praise and all this, majesty, and given all this money to create a movie so monumentally stupid as this. Like Wonder Woman 1984 is brilliantly stupid. Like, it is so bereft of intelligence. Like, it is a phenomenal mess. Like, this is almost Mulan levels of just bad. Like, I see why they were like, well, fuck it, let's just put this thing out. And like I said, there's sometimes CGI is fine, and there are times CGI looks really bad. Like, there's this one chase sequence I kind of mentioned that they were doing in Egypt just because I guess they made a different locale for things. There's one woman grabs these two kids, and they look so rubbery and so fake. It's awkward. It's so awkward looking. It's like you couldn't just have one or have the actual actor grabbing the two kids and film, them on a green stage or something like that, because you just have a background behind them. That's all I got to do. It's like I don't get how there's a director out there that totally doesn't understand how to do this. That is supposed to be a mainstream director. It's like, this is super simple, lady. I could have told you how to do this. Like, I actually am kind of happy this kind of terrible film exists. Like, this is not Man of Steel, Murder Man versus Captain Hypocrite and Suicide Squad, or Birds of fucking Prey levels of, like, incompetence. And those where they're infuriating. This is so utterly incompetent that it's actually kind of almost enjoyable in a bad way. Like, it is enjoyable as a Batman versus Robin flick. In fact, I dare say this might be DCEU's Batman v Robin. Or Batman and Robin movie. It's comically bad. It's so terrible. The writing is really bad. And there's so many times that this movie could be ended quickly, but because we have to have this false pathos and this attempt at trying to pretend that there is actually something deeper being said or needing to be meant through all this, that I actively wonder if they understood what the fuck they were doing throughout it. Because this movie, ooh, whoa, Wonder Woman 1984, it doesn't feel like the 80s. It doesn't feel like a good Wonder Woman movie. It doesn't feel like a good superhero movie. In fact, it's a bad movie. Like, if I actually gave this a score, like actually finally score the damn thing, I will say it's not a 1. There are some bright spots throughout it. And not only that, but it is an infinitely watchable flick, I would say. Like, despite it being a train wreck and a half, like, it is worthy of laughing at it. There were a couple times Meg and me were watching it and laughing at how stupid it was. But, and not only that, I will say Chris Pine is still charming as ever. I don't know why we had to bring him back. He is gone before the third act. He comes in at the beginning of the second act and is gone before the third. What the hell? Why'd you bother? Honestly, if I wanted to give this a score, I'd give it a 2. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's easily one of the most, like, bafflingly bad flicks I've seen in a while. Like, there was a lot this movie had going for it that somehow the director just let it be like sands and time, just go right through their fingers. They let everything fall apart and decided to make this just batshit crazily stupid film that is so devoid of anything remotely decent. I guess, like, some people say it's like, oh, well, it's more of meant to be an emotional film, blah, blah, blah. That does not change the fact that this is a absurdly stupid movie. Like, you can be as emotional as you are, but if you are still an idiot, if you're an idiot, you're still a fucking idiot. I don't care how fucking emotional and righteous you feel you are. That does not make you less stupid. Yeah, I think what kind of cements this is too for me is the absolute absurd stupidity of Wonder Woman riding lightning. It's like, I get it. She's the daughter of Zeus. And I guess that's the one thing I could say as well about her not getting affected by, the lightning. It's like, okay, I guess I'll forgive it because she, is, a daughter of Zeus, so lightning shouldn't affect her. But I don't get why she was able to, like, ride the lightning with her lasso of truth. And on top of that, she can sort of fly. Eh, I don't know. Guys, it's I don't want to keep talking about because I'm just gonna keep talking about how like over the fucking top Pedro Pascal is. Like he should totally be like this charming businessman, but he's obviously a snidely whiplash, like evil villain do gooder or do eviler dude, and it's so not what this movie should have been. But he is like almost as bad as Arnold. Maybe he's Poison Ivy from Batman and Robin. Oh my god, this movie is it's something. That is the best thing I could say about this. This is at least something. But it is a bad something. It's one of the worst flicks this year. It's easy to say that. It's at least memorable. I'll give it that much. It also has some memorableness about it. I can't even say words. My brain's just all done. But hey, that's my feelings on Wonder Woman 1984. Let me know below if you liked it or not. But hey, until then, we'll probably eventually get into the best and worst of 2020 soon. And no, we're not going to talk about moments. We're just going to talk about the films themselves. But until then, I'll see you all there. So, bye bye, everybody.